Hello everyone, it's Nicole D'Angelo for another one of my Let's Play videos. This one I'm calling Learning to Fly with Nikki, Batgirl, D'Angelo. Now, I am a pilot, and I started flying at a very young age. I think my first flight was at 15. I soloed at 16 by taking part in a educational program on Long Island called Board of Occupational Education, and getting into something that allowed you to get all of your hours needed to get your solo, and the school district actually paid for it. My first flight ever was in the Civil Air Patrol, and it was, at 14, I'm sitting in the right seat, and the pilot looks at me and he says, "You look a little scared. Do you want to take the aircraft off?" And I looked at him like, I don't know. I am severely acrophobic to this day, but I still, or whatever you call fear of heights, but I still wanted to fly. So I took the wheel, he talked me through it, and that was all I needed to know that I wanted to get my pilot's license. Well, that was when I was 14, so you figure that was right around 1979. And I finally amassed enough money while going to Dowling College for Aeronautics and Management to get my license in October of 1995. And I have been flying sporadically since then. I have a couple of hundred hours, number of hours towards my instrument, but getting married, having children, and never having enough money to complete anything was always a problem. So my first computer I ever purchased was an Amiga 500, and the first game I ever purchased on that was Flight Simulator by, I think it was BAO at the time, Bruce Artwork and Associates. I've owned every single one of the flight simulators since then, even the ones that weren't so good from Microsoft and the ones that were great from Microsoft. But Microsoft has sold off that franchise. They pretty much destroy most games these days. And that franchise is now in the hands of none other than Dovetail Games, so I don't know what to expect from them. So they have Dovetail Games Flight Simulator coming out later in the year, but what they've decided to do is to release this program ahead of time with the technology that they'll be using for Flight Simulator, which is all 64-bit, which should give us much better add-ons in the future, and hopefully a better just a better game overall. That's not my belief system here. This game at $15 is definitely worth $15. It's not a great game. It's an okay game. It has an okay flight model. It has okay average flight training, but it does skip a lot. If you're going to call something flight school, I expected more from it until I saw the price tag. Essentially, there should be a lot of things that you're told before you get into the aircraft, but I guess gamers of today just don't give you... They just don't have that patience to follow through a game that might take a little bit more to learn. I know a flight sim person would, so this is not for your flight sim fanatic. This is for someone just getting into simulation right now. So the game starts off with a brief overview of the controls, and it does your first takeoff, which is essentially what you do in your first lesson. I don't know how lessons are given today. I don't know if they've been changed for the impatience of most Americans or not. But back in the day, and I hate saying that because I don't feel as old as I am, but back in the day, you had some ground school before you even touched the aircraft. You had to have an understanding of weather, you had to have an understanding of aeronautics, and you had to have an understanding of the aircraft itself. At the ripe age of 14, before I actually got into that aircraft, the pilot took a painstakingly long time to explain to us how we were getting the weather for the day, and then walked each one of us individually and then as a group around the aircraft doing a pre-flight. So essentially, that aircraft got pre-flighted 4 times. Once with each one of the children that were going into it, and then once as a group, where we were doing the pre-flight and he was looking at it. And of course, each time we were being led away and then brought back, and he changed some things up, like leave control locks on. He would leave oil cap undone. Just stupid things that he would be seeing if we had the meticulousness to find out. And that is something that I think people should have to do if you're going to call it a flight school. But again, simulation. I don't know how you would simulate that, though I know that some add-on plane aircraft, like the ones from A to A, do have that system in it. There's also the whole weight and balance thing, right? You have to know how this aircraft is going to fly. Nonetheless, this game gets you right into one of the, one of the legends. Well, it's a Super Cub, not a Cub, but the legends of general aviation, Piper PA-18, and that's pretty awesome in itself. I have flown in a Cub before. I have flown a Cub before and loved it. I love them all better, which is a, it's a high-wing tail dragger that has a much better engine that the Civil Air Patrol uses now for search and rescue. But this aircraft kind of flew more mechanically than it did fluidly, and that was a little bit of a disappointment to me.
We'll perform a normal takeoff and climb to 1,000.
Okay, we are being told what to do, and it took me about 5 tries doing this video for me to get it to this point, because there is no calibration routine for the throttle and joystick in the game, like there is in other modern games. So you have to rely on Windows to pretty much do the calibration, which sucks. But in the long run, I found that downloading the Razor software and just setting my curves and, creating a profile for flight school worked a lot better. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem when you try to follow through with a lot of the things the instructor tells you. The instructor, in the first couple of times I tried this, was telling me, maintain 90 knots, maintain 90 knots, maintain 2100 RPM, 2100 RPM, full throttle. You can't do full throttle. It would start, it did remind me of my last flight instructor, who was a former Marine Corps Aviate Harrier pilot, but it was kind of annoying after a while. I've had some amazing instructors over my life. Amazing. I'd have to say the most unique one was a Civil Air Patrol Czech pilot who actually took me up for probably about 2 hours of training. And let's just say we're not going to give you his name because some of the things that he did were not legal. But like one thing that he showed me to do, we went up to Rome in Georgia. Or was it Cartersville? It was Cartersville, sorry. Because I remember that Phoenix Air was over to the right. And we were at about 290 feet and passing through 300, and he chucks the throttle and says, "You just lost your engine, get it back on the ground." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "I got the airplane." And he turned that plane around on a dime. He had already called emergency making an emergency landing, and he put it down like a feather dropping to the ground. Now, why is that different? Because if your engine goes out at 300 feet, you're supposed to find a place to land in front of you. In front of me were trees. To the right was a coal power plant. To the left were trees and a road and a lake, I believe it was. So really, I couldn't, in my mind, fathom turning it around and landing it on the ground. He also did something where we were flying around in August, so it's in Georgia. It's hot. It's extremely hot. And he's got his knee pushing the door open, saying he's hot and he wants to cool off. Well, what he was really doing was trying to add a little bit of yaw effect into the aircraft every now and then, just to see how I would handle my slow flight. And he was doing it at like times of slow flight, and it's not enough like to place the airflow like a rudder, but it was just enough when I was trying to do slow flight and stalls that it was having a bigger effect than you would imagine. So he did a lot of cool things, but he taught me probably the most amazing emergency procedures that I've learned. I've flown with other strange people in Civil Air Patrol out here. Again, they'll remain nameless. I have one gentleman. We were flying across the northern part of Atlanta, so north of 285. So you do fly through PDK, Peachtree DeKalb airspace. PDK is a GA airport right in Buckhead. I mean, it's right in Georgia, right? It's right. It's not Buckhead. It's not really Atlanta, but it's like on Peachtree Industrial. It's right there in the middle of everything. So I did all of my flight training, or I should say most of it. I did some of it at Republic on Long Island, but I'd say about more than 75% of my flight training on Long Island was done in one airport, and that airport was Islip MacArthur. Islip MacArthur, I'd be in a 150, 152, 172, 182, sitting behind a 757. I wouldn't be taking off on the same runway, but just trying to give you an idea of how air traffic control was busy in this place. So you'd have to get your intentions out very quickly. MacArthur Tower, Cessna 213 November Yankee, holding at runway 33 right, ready for takeoff. This guy, he's on the radio going, and I'm flying as pilot in command, and he goes, I'll take care of the radios. I'm like, all right, that's good. Anytime somebody wants to take care of the radios for you, that's great. You can look out the window, you can scan your instruments more, you can do more things, right? And he comes off and he goes, PDK Tower, this is... And I can't remember the call sign of the CAP plane that we were in at this point. And he's taking a mic. In my mind, I'm counting, going, okay, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000. And he's just taking forever to get out his radio message. And finally, the controller at PDK Tower goes, Cap Flight, whatever it is, please expedite your radio calls. And the guy starts over with another call, and I'm like, I got the radio. And I wouldn't let him touch the radio, and I never flew with that guy again, even though he was the nicest old man ever. Alright, so what you just saw was the ending of the first one of the lessons, which was takeoff, and that went off well. I am going to show you this one, because this one is where things get a little weird and where I start saying the plane flies a little mechanically. And then once I know that, I do this mission over, because this one is a fail. It is a big fail, and I'm a good simulation pilot, a really good one. And I don't use autopilots. I trim the plane. I like to fly VFR in a lot of these, and just because I like some of the sceneries that some of the people are able to make, or some of the sceneries I'm able to buy. I love to look at them. But in this one, I don't know. I mean, it's almost like the controls are way too heavy. There is a crosswind on here, and it's pushing you somewhat to the west. And I didn't notice that, so I have to keep on correcting my heading, and I should have just put a crab angle in there, and that would have been great, but I didn't expect them to put like crosswinds and stuff in it this early. Or there's a problem with my controls and I gotta fix them, so it's one or the other. The other piece of this was trimming this plane was crazy, and I went back into Flight Sim Steam Edition, which is just Flight Sim, but that's not owned, but licensed by Dovetail Games. And I took out one of my favorite aircraft there, the DA-42, which I have in both Flight Simulator and X-Plane, and I trimmed it up in like 2 seconds. And then I took out a Cessna and trimmed it up in 2 seconds. So this had me chasing it all over the place until I realized what its deficiencies were. Then I started the next mission, and I get it done really fast. So, the worst aircraft story I can tell you is this. This is the last time I've flown with Civil Air Patrol in this area. We were flying from Cobb McCollum, RYY, to Monroe, Georgia. Monroe is in the southeast of Atlanta, and there was a glider there, a glider tow plane there that one of the CAP officers needed to pick up and fly back to Cartersville, because he was going to have glider flights for the cadets that weekend. So I was chosen as a PIC for it. I was working at IBM at the time, so this is about the time that my children, my 2 boys were... Is it about the time? It might have been... I think it's right before my 2 boys are being born, because I remember... Yeah, it's right before my boys are being born. I have twin boys that are 15 now, so this is a while ago. And I have another really good friend. He's the... pretty much the chief mechanic for the aircraft that CAP has, and he's going to fly in the back. Right, so it's 3 people. You know, we're not overweight, we're fine, and it's an August afternoon, so it's August in Georgia. We start doing the pre-flight, and I asked him to do one thing: grab the weather. Okay, one thing. So I'm in the middle of the pre-flight, and he comes out, he goes, what are you doing? We gotta get going. I'm like, I'm pre-flighting the aircraft. Every one of my instructors, including the last one that I had, which I have to go into my logbook to remember his name. You should remember names, but I'm starting to forget them at my age. And he goes, just what are you doing? Someone just flew the aircraft, just pre-flight it. So I piss him off by saying, no, I'm not taking off without pre-flighting the aircraft. And I'm meticulous in the pre-flight. I take my time. I look at everything. So as I'm sitting there checking the fuel, he's like, D'Angelo, can we just get going? It's gonna get dark soon or whatever. I'm like, no. I go, so it took me like 5 more minutes to pre-flight the aircraft. And the funny thing is, had I just listened to him, the control lock, which he walked past, was still on the elevator. So the last thing that I'm coming around the aircraft, back to the pilot seat, and the control lock's on. I said, I thought you said it was ready to go. And he goes, what do you mean? I throw the control lock in the back. So if I listened to you, this would have been a bad situation. So I'm already pissed at him. He's sitting right seat. I told him I have all radios and I'll take care of everything. All right. So this is a brand new Cessna 182 that CAP had gotten back then. Full glass cockpit. So it had the, well, not full glass cockpit. It had all the regular analog instruments, and then it had a Garmin unit that was pretty big and pretty powerful in there for GPS. And, I had just gotten checked out on it. It was good, so I put in our flight plan. We're going to fly around the northern perimeter of Atlanta. So essentially follow 285 east, and then turn right when we come to Lawrenceville and go towards, turn south and then go towards Monroe. So I go, what's the weather? He goes, oh, it's clear. I'm like, all right, so what's the weather? So I turn on the weather, and the first thing the column says is, there's the failure I was talking about, is that there's going to be pop-up thunderstorms. I said, did you see where these storms are coming from? He goes, yeah, it was all clear to the west. Okay, so here's the deal. In Georgia, 95% of the weather systems come from the west. That's just the way it is. Now, there are some times then weather patterns are going to come from the northeast. And it's rare, but it happens. So I'm setting this up perfectly now, okay? So he looked, didn't listen, didn't read the report, didn't listen to the report. We get ATIS. ATIS is talking about pop-up thunderstorms. And we're flying on VFR, so we don't have a flight plan. So I essentially take off, head out, and over PDK, which is probably about 15 minutes out, because you got to climb to altitude, you got to get your turn, you got to be handed off, right? I start noticing it's gray to the east. I go, it's very dark over to the east. He goes, yeah, but there's nothing to the west, so don't worry, they're going to move ahead of us. So I'm like, all right, let me just get weather for one of the aircraft, one of the airports around there. So I start getting weather for Lawrenceville. Lawrenceville is talking about crosswinds. They're talking about heavy rain moving in. And I'm like, I think we should just touch down in Lawrenceville. So now we're actually about 5 minutes past PDK. We're coming up on Lawrenceville. Probably another 10 minutes and we're going to make our turn. As we're going, it's getting darker and darker, and I'm starting to see flashes on the horizon. I go, are you sure? I go, I see thunderstorms out here. I said, let's get weather, bring on ATIS, and he's being very negative about the things I'm asking. Well, anyway, we get to Lawrenceville, ceiling's dropping. He tells me, just push south, it's only another 20 minutes, we can skirt underneath it. As I turn south, I'm flying south for no more than 2.5 minutes. Lightning comes across the nose of the aircraft, and I swear it could have been right on the nose, but it was probably more like a quarter of a mile ahead of me. I'm kind of blinded at this point. I am pissed out of my mind, and all of a sudden we get a microburst, and the plane's nose is almost pointed vertically at the ground, and we have been turned 90 degrees. So now we're turned 90 degrees, nose pointing, and I'm looking at him going, you are a motherfucker. I'm sorry, I did say that to him. And I said, I right the aircraft, I pull it up. We lost probably about 1,200 feet. I stay there because the ceiling is now dropped. And I turn to the nearest airport heading, which I think is Lawrenceville, and hit direct, right? So direct Lawrenceville. It's like all this stuff in my mind is happening in slow motion, but it all happened within a split second. And he goes, what are you doing? I'm going to Lawrenceville. And I go, you just shut up. And I look in the back and I say to the, let's just call the guy John in the back. That's not his name. I say, John, make sure he doesn't talk to me anymore. And I turn towards Lawrenceville. I call emergency landing. They're telling me the airport's closed. You cannot land here. I go, Cap Flight calling emergency landing. I'm landing here. So one of the things my Marine Corps instructor had taught me was crosswind landings. Every time we had crappy weather that you could still fly in, he would have me up with him and teach me crosswind landings. Because to him, that was the most important thing to learn, because that's when people would screw up aircraft or kill themselves. So I had done literally over 150 of these crosswind landings. I could show you my logbook one day. It was nuts. So I come into Lawrenceville, and oh my god, my crab angle has me almost 45 degrees off the center line of the runway. Would have been probably the 5th time in my life I've made a landing like that, but oh my god, this was the best landing I've ever made in my life in a crosswind. I got the aircraft down, we pulled it over to the FBO, we tied it down, the airport tower is looking for us, and at this point they're talking on handheld radios, because I swear on my life, lightning hit the tower communications and knocked it out. We make it into the FBO drenched just from walking the 30 to 40 feet from the aircraft now to the FBO. They're like, wow, that was a great landing. And I go, thank you. But, you know, I'm sitting there, I'm shaking and I'm pissed. I don't want to talk to this guy. I'm sitting off by myself. That guy I said, called John, who's a good friend of mine, or was back then, he comes over to calm me down. I said, I'm all right. Just don't let him talk to me. And as we're sitting there, the rain is hitting the ground, well, hitting the window so hard because of these crosswinds or the winds, and it's coming through the sides of the glass. And that's the last time I actually flew for real. I swear I almost died. After everything cleared, we got down to Monroe. We picked up the, I dropped off the numbnut, and then flew back to McCollum, set the aircraft down, and wrote a safety report about this gentleman and about how he almost cost a CAP airplane, and how how me being a, well, you got to think of this. I was at fault, right? Because I was the pilot in command. I shouldn't have listened to him in the first place. I should have gotten weather myself because I'm PIC. I should have done more radio work to find out what's going on ahead. And I should never have made the turn to the south. I should have landed at Lawrenceville at my first thought. But you know, when you're sitting there and you're PIC, it doesn't always mean that you're the ranking officer in the aircraft. And that gentleman was a captain, and I was a second lieutenant at the time. I was promoted to first lieutenant soon after that, but I'm telling you, that was a scary situation. So right now what we're doing is we're doing climbs and descents. That's what they're teaching. And this is kind of sort of, when I go through my logbook, what I did for my first 5 flights.
That's right. And don't forget to use trim to help you hold.
When we get to the solo part of this, which will be in the next, not the next episode, but 2 episodes from now, most likely you'll be hearing the wonderful story about my first solo, and with a girl that I went to Dowling College with, this girl, Rory, who was just awesome. The FBO was owned by her dad. Her brother is a pilot in one of the airlines right now. He's pretty awesome. And her dad was a Huey pilot in Vietnam, and he injured his back pretty bad in an auto rotation, but we'll tell that story a little bit later. I flew with this FBO for a long time, or flight school, and absolutely loved them. And for a little bit, I flew over at $1 Million Air at Republic, or Farmingdale. I think it's RPK, I think, Republic. And I flew Cherokees and Warriors and Archers out there. I flew mostly Cessnas at the Islip MacArthur. I do like the Cherokees, I do. And I do like the, well, let's put it this way. Living on Long Island with all the scenes to see, being in the Cessna is awesome because it's a high wing and you can see down and you can see everything below you. Being in a Cherokee, when you're trying to take people to look around, is not awesome. But when you want to get someplace from A to B, The Cherokee is an awesome aircraft, and it's very safe. So
Use
two
trim to help you
amazing
haul 75
GA
miles per
aircraft,
hour.
manufacturers Piper and Cessna. That's mostly what I've flown, and I've flown them all. The Maul, MAUL, I think it is. That is just an amazing plane to fly. So we got our descents down. We descend at 75. We climb at 75.
Good. Hold
And it's
75
all
miles
about
per hour all
knowing
the way down
one
to 2,000
simple
feet.
fact, which he does not. Well, maybe he does. I think he does explain that here. He didn't explain it in the beginning, but I think he explains it in this lesson. Pitch controls speed, throttle controls altitude.
We're approaching
Now,
2,000
once
feet.
you get that
Be ready to
idea as a
increase
pilot,
pitch and
everything
power
becomes
so that we
much
level out
easier.
right on
Now, when you're
altitude.
flying GA aircraft and you're flying commercial
Here's
aircraft, it's
2,000.
not
Pitch up to
pushing the
maintain this
throttle
altitude,
forward to go faster and turning the
and adjust
stick
the power
and
to
making
fly
your
90
tight
miles per
turns.
hour.
It's all about flying
Be
courses
sure
and
to
getting
trim
from
the
A to
aircraft to
B
maintain 90
and
miles per
staying
hour.
at your altitude and talking to the tower and, well, you know, it's a lot
Well done,
more
you're a natural.
rigid and a lot
Of course,
more,
I'm a pretty good instructor too.
trying to think of the word here. It's a lot more
Just
procedure,
remember,
okay?
use pitch for
So
airspeed,
just
power
remember
for
that. If you're going to fly GA aircraft in a simulator or for real, if you could just remember that one thing. Pitch controls airspeed, throttle controls altitude. All right, so I think this one is done. We had 3 of our lessons completed here. The first one, takeoff. The second one was just how to trim the aircraft. And the third one was doing climbs and descents. Now, I think they're going to teach us stalls because before you take off and land the aircraft, before you go out and solo it yourself, you really do want to know how to do stalls. Nope, they're not going to. Doing turns to heading, approach to landing, and light aircraft pilot's license. Okay. This is going to be a problem because I really think that you need to learn how to stall before you go up and do your solo, but I guess they're not going to do that until we go to the second flight school, which will be in Arizona, I believe. So hopefully you guys like this episode and you like this series. If you do, please comment below. Be sure to click the thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed, and please look for a change in my Patreon. I think I'm going to go to a monthly model instead of a per show model. I think that will make it a lot more accessible to people that want to help the channel grow. And with that said, you all be safe out there, and I will talk to you soon.